In this insightful conversation, we unwrap the tech leadership journey of Vaishali Patel, a seasoned professional with over 20 years experience in the tech industry and currently the head of software engineering at Zopa Bank. Vaishali's extensive experience spans across various industries, enhancing her skill set from development to leading large teams of 50 or even more people. She shares her journey from hands-on technical roles to managing development teams and implementing agile methodologies. We discuss a lot of things, some of which include Vaishali's path from early tech education to becoming a seasoned tech leader, Vaishali's leadership evolution, her journey in evolving her leadership style and managing tech teams, breaking barriers, tackling the challenges women face in the tech industry specifically, challenges in agile implementation and overcoming hurdles to foster efficient tech dynamics. Most importantly, the power of diversity and how cultural diversity enriches tech teams and drives innovation. We also touched upon decentralized decision-making and how it can empower teams for effective problem solving. And finally, we briefly discussed the future of banking, insights on digital currency and the evolving landscape of banking security. Join us and jump into Vaishali's insightful journey and her impactful contributions to the tech world. This is a Baldur Connect podcast. Baldur Connect is a recruitment agency for tech companies. If ever such a need arises in your company, please make sure to reach out. And now, without further ado, jump into this conversation with Vaishali Patel.
Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys, Baldur Connect podcast.
Let's get started. So welcome everybody to the show. Today, I'm here with Vaishali Patel. Vaishali, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I really appreciate your time. As we discussed before we started, you're very busy. I know things are hectic sometimes in the developer world. So I really appreciate you being here. And just to give the audience a bit of a background, how we got to this conversation. So we started doing podcasts with a lot of CEOs, CTOs, hiring managers, some of our customers for employer branding purposes and whatnot. And not surprisingly, in the tech sector here in general, there's not a lot of women in position of leadership in high up roles. So we kind of put out the bad signal on LinkedIn, and we wanted to ask some of our network advice for who is an interesting person in this field to speak to. Obviously, the answer was overwhelming. A lot of people recommended you publicly, privately. Obviously, some people you work with that have a great experience with you, some people that you interact with. That's why we wanted to get you on the show. Obviously, get your advice, get your opinion, get your side of things, and kind of unwrap how you got to where you are and maybe some practical advice for other women and other people in general to get into tech. Okay?
Yeah.
So Vaishali, do you mind to give us maybe a brief rundown of your background? And you can go in as much detail or as little detail as you want. But basically, maybe we'll take it from your education, what you studied, and then kind of how your career progressed to where it is today.
Yeah, absolutely. So actually out of secondary school, I'm not quite sure what we call that in Europe, but going into college, I had a decision to make at that point really about what is it I wanted to do and what I wanted to study. And actually the two things I wanted to, that I was interested in were very, very different in terms of the subjects I would pick, right? So ever since I was a child, I wanted to be a doctor. And for me, that was the path I was trying to go down up until I came to choosing college. At that point, I realized I actually really loved computers and technology as well. Never done a day of programming in my life. Didn't know anything about software engineering or networking or anything.
So was it just you playing around and seeing, hey, I really like this, I want to get into that field?
Yeah, we had a subject at school called IT and business. I don't know what it was about that subject, or, I always found it easy. It was like the easiest subject that anyone could ever have given me. I'd often sit in class when they were giving us a task to do. I'd often sit there having done it like before anybody else. And I would just sit there like swiveling around in my chair waiting for the teacher to give us the next thing to do. So, really interested me. I just was, I just took to it. So anyway, the decision was made. So I did computer studies at college, and it covered a whole breadth of things, all the networking, communications, the programming side, the business side as well. And actually, it was a programming side that really captured me. So we started with Pascal, which is a great teaching language, and then moved on to C and C++, which, I loved. And actually, I found I was really good at it. I was helping everybody else in the class doing their things and understanding everything. So university, I didn't want to do computer studies at university. I didn't want to do computer science. I didn't want to do networking and everything else. I just wanted to do programming. So I chose software engineering as my degree, and then, graduated, got a job. The first part of my career was very much engineering, so properly engineering. So that embedded C, and C++. Very much on the Windows side of things, and embedded, like even doing assembly language in production, which was crazy. But I actually realized probably kind of 6-7 years into my career that the world really was moving towards the web side of the world. And if I wanted to make some money in this career, that actually I probably needed to learn some web development. So I went down the route of learning ASP.NET and that kind of thing. So down the Microsoft route, really, and really stayed down that route. And so C++, I was always the engineer who was hired for the web side of things, and then they'd figure out that I knew C and C++, so also I had to take on those projects as well. So often doing all three languages together, which is kind of cool. I really loved doing that.
And that was right after the .com bust as well,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, and a lot of engineering companies, even today, right? A lot of pure engineering companies still use C and C++ because they are the machine languages to be doing. They're very, very powerful. Although I suspect recently everyone's probably picking up Rust. But yeah, they were really powerful languages. Everybody still uses them. There are very few people, I guess, now who want to go and work in those languages. I certainly would not go back to doing them. I think there's no IntelliSense in them, so there's no way I'm going to remember all the syntax.
What would you do different if, let's say, you were starting out today, or you have a daughter, let's say, who's getting into tech, and you're giving her advice, okay, you should actually take this direction?
I would really encourage them to find their niche. The technology sector nowadays is so wide. You know, you can go down cybersecurity, you can go down software engineering, and even within software engineering, there are so many different routes you can go down. I do encourage people to try and learn some of the, you know, the base languages like C or C++, or, you know, I mean, Java is still such a common language to learn, and it's great actually. So learn Java, learn, you know, all of those, but actually maybe learn that as a basics to kind of get all your programming skills down and the way you think. But really look at what's up and coming. So AI is obviously a huge subject right now, right? And it would be stupid to not learn AI and everything that's going on there. And look into what's up and coming in terms of the languages. And, you know, front-end languages are constantly evolving. It's one of the reasons I decided not to be a developer anymore, because I couldn't learn any more languages. But yeah, you know, TypeScript, React Native, all the mobile development, mobile phones are never going to go away. So learning that side of things is really important, I think.
And how did your career progress up to this once you finished studies? I know you had a lot of work experience, so maybe could you walk us through how your career evolved and maybe your knowledge base as well with that?
Yeah, I was unfortunate in the start of my career of being made redundant quite a lot, for various reasons. Won't go into like all the different reasons. But the last straw for me really was I joined a company, and during the interview with the director, he gave me a bit of a lecture about how long my CV already was in my short career, and really encouraged that, you know, I need to show some like loyalty to a company and that kind of thing. And I said, you know, that's exactly what I'm looking for. I'm looking for somewhere I can stay and I can be a part of and, you know, make a change. So I joined the company, and 2 months later, we all got called down to the factory floor and told that the company is basically going into liquidation and we should all just go home. And at that point, I was like, I'm done with being a permanent employee. I am now going to go and be a contractor. So my CV ended up quite long after that, because I was every kind of 8 months to a year moving to a different company and learning something new. And I loved it. I loved the fact that I could go into a place, solve a problem, not have to then sit there and maintain it and do all the boring stuff, but actually then I could move on to do something else.
You're more of a 0 to 1 person. You like to create things.
Yeah, I used to get kind of bored after about 8 months of being somewhere, and, you know, once I knew the system, I was like, okay, where's the challenge now? You know, but actually I found from a learning perspective wasn't a great thing. You know, companies always want to look for someone who's got the latest skills, and I wasn't getting that. Doing that. So there was every so often in my career I would join a company and be a permanent employee, and there are two reasons for that. One, as to grow and learn as a person and become a senior engineer, but also to learn new skills and be part of a team for a longer period. I really missed that, actually. So I joined a bunch of companies. MVC was coming out. Everybody was wanting MVC in Microsoft. So I went and learned that and joined a company and actually really started my leadership skills doing that as well. So Scrum and Agile was becoming really popular. So I was learning Scrum mastering and how Agile and sprints and Kanban was working. And really enjoyed that side of things as well. So that really piqued my interest at that point.
Did you want to give up at any point? Like after all of these experiences, kind of bad lack of it?
No, I loved being a developer, and actually, people used to question me quite a lot, going, "Hey, Vaishali, would you ever consider going into management?" And I would point blank and say, "No, I want to always be hands on. Like I don't mind being a tech lead or whatever, but I always want to fit in the team and doing hands on." So no, I didn't. But actually, there was a point where I got really frustrated somewhere I was working, where we were doing Agile, we were doing 2 weekly sprints. And our stakeholders were just not engaging and giving us the priorities of the work we should be doing. And I was Scrum mastering at that point, and I was quite lucky in that the management trusted me quite a bit. And there was a first day of the sprint, and we had nothing from the stakeholders. And so I made a point of going, well, cool, if you're not going to give us anything, then we're not going to do anything. And the team just sat there like, we did BAU and whatever, but we didn't work on any priorities. And it kind of sent the message home to say, hey, we may be the ones doing the work, but you have to help us and give us the priorities and what you want. So I decided to delve into like, why are these issues happening? Like, why is it always such a struggle for the business to give us their requirements? And, I can sit here and be pissed off about it, or I can try and understand and help. Yeah, exactly. So I decided actually for a little while to not be a developer and try and do some more of that stuff. So I did a couple of contracts where actually one contract was really interesting. I was the BA and I was the developer, which was a really interesting position to be in. I spent a lot of time sitting. It was a marketing team that I was developing something for. And I spent a lot of time just sitting with them for days, looking at what they're doing, how they're doing it, where the improvements could be, where they were struggling, all the manual processes. And then figured out, actually, this could be a plan of action, taking it back to the marketing manager going, hey, what do you think of this? And really working really closely to figure out what we needed to do and solve those challenges. And I learned actually it takes a long time. It takes a lot of dedication to sit with the business and do this. And I was just doing one piece of this, right? I was brought in as a contractor to focus in on a certain point.
Right.
But can you imagine being a permanent employee in a company where actually you don't just have one focus, you have 3 or 4 that you need to deal with, and not having the bandwidth to do it all the time to the level that I did there. So I found it really insightful.
What did you discover was, like, when you looked into why companies are so slow to adjust to these different new methodologies, new frameworks, that obviously as somebody who works with this, you see the benefits, you see the advantages. So what was it about the management team, the business, that made it slow or maybe resistant for them to adjust to this?
I guess until someone knows they tangibly see what the benefits of something are, they don't understand why you need to change the way they're already working. I think a lot of the time, Agile is seen as a developer thing, as a development engineering thing. And actually it's not. Agile is it's a company thing. It's got to come from the top. And everybody has to work in that way. It never works if it's just the engineering team. And people don't realize that. And so all they really see is, well, why do we have to why do we have to change the way everybody works and learn all these new
skills?
Things
are working just fine.
When actually, could the developers just not work faster? Could we just not add another developer, And it's like, that's not the point. That's not what's happening here. And it's really difficult to demonstrate it when you're, being fought against. The other side, actually, that I've really faced is that the engineering team and developer team are really against Agile in a lot of places. And this is due to bad experiences, it being done badly in a lot of places where it's been more of a process than a framework that's been followed. And I can't tell you the number of times I've heard, that's not how you do it in Agile. That's not Agile. We're not doing Agile. And me having to sit there and go, what is Agile to you? What do you mean by that? And why can't it just be that we take the bits that fit in the way we work, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, there's a lot of resistance. I think there's just been a lot of bad experiences when it first came out and everyone just jumped on the bandwagon and didn't really understand how it worked. I think it's getting better. I think people are understanding that it's, you know, you have to be pragmatic when you use these frameworks.
Do you see any places, whether it's companies or teams or certain industries where Agile is actually being leveraged and is being implemented the right way?
Have I experienced a whole company working in an Agile? No, I don't think I have. I think there are bits of it that work really, really well. In fact, one of the companies I worked at, it's the best place I've ever used Jira. Like, Jira was used in the best way possible. And I used to hate Jira. Like, I joined this company and I was like, oh my God, I have to use Jira, you know. And actually I left the place going, I just want to use Jira all the time now.
What was it that stood out to you that worked so well?
The whole company used it. Everybody used Jira.
So it was like religious. It was like a cult almost.
It was like a cult. Like, when you started a conversation, the first thing you would start a conversation with was the Jira number, was the ticket number. And everybody used it for communication. So there was a problem with customer services or a system that customer services were using. They'd raise a Jira ticket. That would come to my team. We'd triage it, put it in the right bucket, project, BAU, wherever it needed to go. The stakeholders still had visibility of the ticket, which meant that when one of my developers or someone picked it up and they had a question about it, they would question it on the Jira ticket and the reply would come back on the Jira ticket. Even if they were having a Teams conversation, everybody knew to update the Jira ticket with the update.
Right.
I
so
mean,
everything was transparent and up to date.
Yeah, it was perfect. We went as far as, you know, even the PMO office was using it for asset management. You know, everything was done via a Jira ticket.
Do you think there's a certain level of trust that has to be built and transparency before you can run a company in that way or a team in that way?
I think it helps build that trust and transparency, actually. I think what really hurts trust and transparency is when communication is not in a structured way. A lot of places, you know, everyone uses Slack nowadays. Everyone uses email. And then we have Jira, and then we have Confluence, and other places have SharePoint as an addition. And trying to find the information you're looking for is like an absolute nightmare. And actually, as someone as head of who's not involved in the daily work that everyone does, I still need to know how delivery is going. I still need to know if there's an issue. And it can be an absolute nightmare for me to find out this is happening. It could be a Jira ticket. It could be a PR request. It could be someone putting something on Confluence somewhere. It could be a Slack message or a conversation that has been started. And so I feel like sometimes I'm micromanaging because I'm asking so many questions of people all the time. When I'm not trying to do that, I'm just trying to figure out what's happening. And actually, if there was a Jira ticket I could just go to and have a look at, that would be like, okay, cool, let's see what's happening. Yeah, cool.
Yeah, that's right. Interesting. Obviously, you're in the UK and it's a big melting pot. You get people from everywhere. You get people who are second generation, third generation, recent immigrants. You know, you have all kinds of situations.
Yeah.
So do you notice maybe people from different cultural backgrounds bringing in their way of thinking or their experience and maybe implementing it in some kind of creative ways at work? Could be within your teams, could be maybe some other examples that you worked with.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that diversity is so important. Those different cultures that come together bring in different ways, you know, they live in different ways. And so they bring that experience into teams. One of the contracts I worked for, actually, there was we were all contractors. The whole program was contractors. There were 120 people on this contract, you know, developers and QA, and majority of them were from different backgrounds. There was very few UK based or, you know, first generation UK people, and there was a lot of noise on that floor because everybody was constantly talking. There was very little siloed work. which I found amazing. The more you talk to each other, they would sit together. They had a problem, they would just come over and sit together and work on it.
Open space and
Just
everybody
open,
meet.
yeah, open space. Like you walk past them and they're talking about, and I loved it. Like I love sitting there as a manager, listening to all the conversations people were having. Now, some of the conversations were happening in their own language, which is fine because they find it easier to communicate that way, and they were having the conversation within them. I'm lucky enough to be able to understand the language that they were talking in. So there were often times where I would hear them debating, talking about things. And then maybe after 45 minutes, I'd kind of butt in and go, are you guys actually going to make a decision on what you're talking about? Or are you just going to debate it for 45 minutes,
Right.
So that's kind of a little bit of a disadvantage there. But yeah, there was a lot of noise being created there. And I think, we all experience life in very different ways. And if I think of my home life growing up, and now I can look back and think to myself, do you know what? I didn't eat pasta until I was 18 years old. Like I'd never tried pasta. And that's not because, I was just never exposed to it. Even in school, like we never had pasta, which is a very weird concept actually now. And so there were other parts of my culture that are very different. I'm very empathetic towards, when there are cultural holidays happening and what family life must be like for people. It's very
That's important.
different. Yeah, like for instance, Diwali's coming up in a couple of weeks, which is the Hindu festival of lights. And I know what will happen is everybody will travel to their families. Wherever their families are for that weekend, they will be going there for that weekend.
And a lot of dancing.
Yeah, they'll be like, some families will have 50 people in a house celebrating on a day. And so these developers who then come back on a Monday will be tired because they've had a whole weekend of being with families. And I think understanding sometimes, that these festivals need a bit of a downtime when they come back and that kind of thing. But yeah, I think the ideas that come through from all these cultures are very different, and the ways of working are very different as well.
And being from, I guess, like you said, multicultural family background upbringing, again, that helps you being a leader nowadays, managing a huge team, like you said, having that awareness of people's cultures, people's priorities, and so on.
Yeah.
Which we'll get to shortly as well.
Yes.
But I have actually a different question. It's also related to culture. So as I mentioned to you, I work with a lot of developers, especially from all over the world. And I've met quite a few Patels. And I know that the family name Patel is obviously Gujarati. So
yes,
you mentioned that you were considering being a doctor and obviously went into tech, which is a great choice as well, turned out really well for you. Could you share maybe a little bit about the cultural difference of being specifically maybe from a Gujarati ancestry? Because I know from my clients that there's a lot of emphasis on having your own business. There's a lot of emphasis on having land or being a doctor or a landlord or something like that. So tell me maybe if that influenced you in any way.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to approach this from a different perspective, right? Because I'm a girl. And I have a brother who's 9 years older than me. And my family actually very much is have your own business, right? In the early days, my dad worked for people, sure. But actually, since before I was born, he's always had his own businesses. He's not worked for anyone else in my lifetime. He's always worked for himself. And my brother was always encouraged to also go down this path of having his own business and have a family business, actually, not just his business, right? So my dad, when I was born, we owned a mini grocery store, and my dad owned that. And then when I was 3 years old, we migrated to America and we had a motel. And then we came back to the UK and we owned actually quite a large post office in the UK. We were one of the biggest in Birmingham. And then, they sold that. And then my dad retired and my brothers then had his own businesses with properties and all this kind of stuff. I would say my brothers probably spent maximum in his whole life 1 year working for someone else. The rest of his life has been his own businesses. Now, as a girl, my brother always encouraged me to be part of the businesses, right? So even when we had the post office, The first year was the year before I went to university, and any spare time I had, I would work there. In fact, they were quite upset when I turned around and said that I'm going to go get a job somewhere else, because I'm going to be honest with you, cannot work with my brother full time. So I went and worked somewhere else. My brother was really upset that I went and did that. He also encouraged me to go to university and do software engineering and things like that. But any spare time I had, any holidays I had, I was working in the post office with my brother. Yeah, helping. And it was expected. There was no conversation about this. This wasn't like, we're going to ask you. It was like, this is what you're doing. Fine. I love doing it. It wasn't a problem. However, I have never been encouraged or asked to have my own business within my family.
Okay, interesting. Right? So it's more of a son.
Yeah, right. Like, and I've actually made a point of it, because I am in the generations of like my cousins and everyone. I'm the only girl, and then since me, now my nieces and nephews, my cousins' kids, they have girls as well. They all have their own. Like my cousins all have a massive business in New Zealand. They've got a huge business in New Zealand and Fiji. And I did question my cousins. I went, did any of you ask your daughters if they wanted to be part of the family business? And you know what? None of them were even considered to be part of the family business, but all of the sons were. And I said, you know what? We're such a patriarchic family. Like, it really annoys me. My dad actually wasn't bothered if I had a career or not. My dad really, back in the day, just wanted me to get married. And his mindset was, why do you need to worry? Your husband will look after you.
Right.
And I'm really thankful that my brother pushed me down the route of no. You will not rely on someone else's money. You will have your own. Like, you will have your own life. You don't rely on anyone.
Build something on your own.
Exactly. Yeah. Because I've been married and divorced twice. And had I been relying on them, I actually would have been stuck. I would have been able to leave, actually, even in the first instance of it. And it was a bad marriage. I was in a really bad situation, and I needed to get out. And I did that on my own. And I did that because I had my own car. I had my own career. I didn't need to rely on someone else.
No.
And so I'm really thankful that I did it. And my dad later on obviously saw, actually, you know what? I'm really proud of my daughter. She graduated.
I bet.
She stands on her own 2 feet. She holds up the family values still and the cultural values. She can do it all. And he actually changed his mindset around the whole cultural aspect to the point where if anyone said anything about girls or even me, I didn't even have to say anything. He would defend the whole situation. So it was really great for me to be able to change his mindset on things, but it took a while.
And it's also very open-minded from them to actually make that leap.
Yeah, I mean, awesome the way he did it. So he didn't care if I was a doctor, engineer, or became a musician. Like, for him, it was like, I don't care. Like, just get married. So yeah, I really fought that stereotype on things, but yeah, it was a fight. Even going to university was a fight. My dad was like, "You can't go away to university." I was like, "Yeah, no, I am going to go away to university."
And I'm sure you build a lot of resilience and obviously a lot of skills that help you in your career, help you in your life, just by having to go through tough situations, having to persevere, having to not give up.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know previously you mentioned, obviously you worked in a lot of companies, you've seen some good environments, some maybe not so good environments. And you mentioned that obviously the place you work in now, it's a wonderful company culture. So you don't need to get into specifics, but can you maybe share what are some things that you're observing in your team, in your company right now, where you're like, wow, this is very different from some of the past experiences. What makes it stand out? What makes it go so well?
Actually, the last place I worked at is very similar to the company I work at now in terms of the things that I think make it great. One of the biggest things is the development team, the engineering teams, the squads, the tribes are left to self-organize.
Okay.
It's not subscribed that every team has to work in the same way, or everybody must do Agile, everybody must do sprints, everybody must do Kanban. What they say is, you're a tribe, figure out how you work well, right? We know we've got objectives and delivery to do, right? It's a given.
Mm-hmm.
This is what your job is. Like, we're not going to sit here and say, you must deliver blah, 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 because you have to do that. But the way you do that and the processes you have within your team, you figure that out. We're not going to dictate that to you. That is great. That shows that the company from a top level has trust in these people that we hire. We have a really strong hiring process. I think we think about how we come across as a company right from the interviewing process. So it's not about just the interviewee having to impress us, but actually we're really aware of how much we have to impress other people to come and join us. There's a lot of competition out there. And so what we say is we hire strong. We hire you as a strong person, and we expect you to stay strong. Those expectations are clear from day one. The biggest thing for me, I think, especially in the engineering world, is deadlines. And I know I've done a LinkedIn article about this. So if anybody's read that, and they'll know where I'm coming from, right?
And that was one of my questions about you not being a fan of deadlines. Tell me about that.
Yeah, it's, I am not a fan of deadlines. I understand them in certain situations, and of course we have to do them. But coming to a team and saying, hey, we need to achieve this business outcome. Can you tell me how long it's going to take? And the team will turn around and go, well, cool. What are the requirements of this business outcome? And they get 4, 5, 6 sentences to say, this is all we know for now, but can you tell us when you can get it done by? And then being held to that, or being given a date of, you must have something done by the 20th of December. And when we ask why the 20th of December, often the answers are just not tangible enough for us to go, well, that doesn't kind of make sense that it's the 20th of December. If you turn around and go, actually, the FCA have said we have to present to them by the 20th of December, otherwise the business is going to be shut down. Cool, everybody understands that. So again, like the last 2 places I've worked at, we don't have deadlines. We do quarterly objectives. In fact, my last place went to 6 weekly objectives. We do objectives of a short period of time. Everybody understands those objectives, why we're doing them, and what the outcome is if we achieve them, and what the value it's going to provide. We also understand if it's too big or too small, can we break it down? Is there a way of delivering some of it or part of it or all of it? Do we need to spread it across several quarters? And actually, because the product team is part of that tribe, the business is part of the tribe. It's a tribe decision that we're doing this. It's not us saying, oh, we can only do it in 2 quarters, and the business then turning around and going to us, that's not good enough. It's actually the product team and everybody working together to say, yes, that's right, we can only do this much, and explaining it to our stakeholders about why those dates are.
And I believe in that article as well, you also mentioned that, correct me if I'm wrong, but from your experience, it was most of the time like a salesperson setting some kind of arbitrary deadline for the customer to overpromise, and then you're just stuck with this tight deadline that you have to meet, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I've had it as an engineer where I remember one of my managers coming up to me and saying, so, hey, really great prototype that you built there. And I was like, thanks, like, great. The customer thinks we've already got it, so we need to deliver it in 2 weeks. And I'm like, what? You've told the customer we've already got it? It's like, yeah. So you've got 2 weeks to get it done. And I was like, oh my God. And this was something for a huge airport. Like, it wasn't something that I could just throw together and, And I was like, why have you told the customer it's already been, why would you do that? So yeah, like often it's, or it's because a customer has threatened to leave us if we don't implement this feature.
Certain date, yeah.
And so someone's turned around to them and gone, oh no, that's okay, we'll have it for you in a month, we'll have it. And then they've got, okay, cool, well, if you don't have it in a month, I'm leaving. So we're then pressured for one customer, like one person.
Do you think it's important maybe for companies, whether it's the original founding team, whether it's kind of the first 20 hires or whatever that is, but basically having people in positions, in decision-making positions that they have technical background. So where they maybe have done some basic coding, maybe they have learned some of those Agile and Scrum and all these different frameworks. Do you think that's helpful for them to kind of see both sides of the story? Because from my experience, usually if I have to deal with developers, and I'm a visual guy, I draw things like in my notes and stuff, and then I send them and I kind of explain the flow. But then speaking to them helps me understand that what I think needs to be done and then what the ultimate outcome is are 2 different things. And the way the engineer would go about it is different from how I think it should be. going about it. They have insight into options, how to make this better, more efficient, that I cannot even conceive, right? So maybe having that background, technical background for positions and decision-making positions.
That's a difficult one. I think sometimes a little knowledge can be quite dangerous. In fact, sometimes a lot of knowledge can be quite dangerous. There's this experience that most developers have, right, of a manager who used to be technical, who's now a manager, who goes into meetings with technical discussions, and they will turn around and say things like, "Oh yeah, that's easy. Well, that's simple. We can do that in a couple of weeks," because they think they're technical, right? They've got the technical knowledge. They know how it gets done. And then actually when it goes to the development team are like, "Yeah, no, that's not simple and that's not easy." And then they say why. But hey, the manager can't back down now, right? Because he's already said it's simple or easy. So sometimes that little bit of technical knowledge can be quite dangerous. So I really think it depends on the person. It's also quite dangerous in that sometimes I always say it's really hard from being hands-on full-time to moving to a position that's not hands-on anymore.
Right.
So either go to product or line management or people management the way I have. It's really difficult to keep your hands out of what's going on.
Stand a little bit.
Yeah. And countless times where I've done the mistake of jumping in and going, "I'll just help and I will do this thing." And actually you're not helping at all. You're just hindering. Or kind of going, "Hey, the development team doesn't have time to do that thing that the business is asking for. It seems fairly simple, fairly easy. So I'll write something and do it." What I'm not doing is I'm not testing. I'm not TDDing. I'm just throwing something together, right? Thinking I'm helping. Right. Actually, what I've just ended up doing is making things worse for them in the long run, because now the business think they can get stuff and they can't. I think from an understanding perspective, it's really, really helpful. I think if you can be that person who says to yourself, "I understand technical things, but I am no longer the hands-on person. No. So yes, let me have the discussions. Yes, let me question and challenge the decisions that the engineers and the team might be making, but also understand that ultimately they are the experts. They are the people who know what they're doing. They're the ones who are up to date with what is in the industry right now and the technical challenges that they can, what options they've got." So yes, have the discussions, yes, have the challenges, but at the ultimate end of the day, you need to be humble enough to say, "That looks good to me, carry on with that." And understand there will be problems, there will be failures, there will be learnings that will come out of it. But that's what we need to allow them to do, to grow as well. So it can't be perfect from day one.
It sounds to me like you're almost a fan of kind of decentralized decision-making within tech teams. Would that be an accurate assessment?
Yeah. I think you shouldn't, as I said, they're the experts. They're the ones who should be making some of these decisions. That doesn't mean they can't be challenged, right? That doesn't mean that I can't come in and go, "Hey guys, talk me through what you're proposing to do." And that doesn't mean that I can't then go in and go, why are we doing that? What if we did this instead? What would happen? What would be the issues? And they can actually then talk me through going, "Hey, do you know what? We did consider doing that, but if we did that, then there's this, this, and this." I can then turn around and go, "Do you know what? I think actually I'm willing to accept the risk of why you didn't choose this option, but I think it will be better because it will be quicker. So if I accepted the risk, would you be okay with putting?" They'll be like, "Yeah, cool, we'll do that." And those conversations I think are really important to have with them.
One of the previous guests, actually, he's also big on decentralized decision-making, to the point where he kind of stole a funny quote, basically, that when it comes to hiring for tech teams specifically, what they would do is they'd have the whole team sit down and choose, basically give a thumbs up or thumbs down who they want to hire. And if a single person gave a thumbs down, that was a no. If it's something like, the new hire made somebody feel uncomfortable, maybe they're very direct or, demeaning in some way or something like that. So for them, it was kind of like a hell yes or no approach, which I thought was interesting. And he also kind of mentioned, and it's going to lead me to my next question in a second, but basically that he didn't discount the role of HR teams. They do a lot of difficult, like contractual things, managing hiring for different teams, payroll. It's a lot of stuff going on. But basically his view was that, look, I'm a developer, I'm the CEO of the company, and I want my developers to make the ultimate choice who they're going to work with.
Yeah.
It could be somebody who's less technically strong, but they're just such a good fit with everybody else that I believe the overall combination is going to be more interesting. So I'm curious to how much decision making do you, obviously you manage a big team, how much decision making do you as a leader of the team have into certain important hiring decisions? How does the flow look like within your company?
Yeah, so we tend to not hire for a team. So if we have, I guess we usually have loads of roles open, right? So we're never just hiring one person. We normally have a few roles open, whether it's managers or engineers. And so actually the flow of interviewing is everybody's involved in it from all different teams. So from heads of VPs, engineering managers, engineers, and they could be from any team, really, depending who's free, to be honest, like go do an interview. So we have like a first stage where basically it's just a conversation with the person. Any red flags? So this is not about how technical they are or anything, but actually, do they fit some of the values we have, kind of a value-based interview.
Okay.
And that moves them to the second stage, which can be more technical, which are system designs and pairing and all that kind of stuff, right? So engineers and EMs are involved in that side of things. And then there's another last stage interview to kind of say, hey, just making sure they're a team fit or a person fit, and they're not, there's nothing about them that, again, for us is red flags, like how much potential do they have, that kind of thing. And very similar to your last guest, actually, is that we all say how we feel, like, are they hire, no hire, that kind of thing. And we have a wash up at the end, and we all discuss it, like 5-10 minutes, but we all discuss how we're feeling. And ultimately, actually, one of the wash ups we did have where the person actually, the first 3 interviews were a hire. Well, the first 2 interviews were a hire. The third one was a no hire. And then I was the last person, right? So I didn't actually make a decision because I was like, my decision is regardless of what you're all thinking.
What you guys chose, yeah.
And ultimately it was a no hire after the wash up because we all had a discussion and we went, actually, no, unfortunately, this person probably isn't right for us.
And that seems like a healthy way to decide as well.
Yeah, exactly.
It makes the team feel as well that...
you don't get context, so...
And they get as well, they feel like maybe they're involved in the decision making. They get to choose who they get to work with, which is kind of empowering to the developers. Okay. I'd like to change notes and talk to you about leadership. Again, a lot of people spoke very highly of you, that you're a great person to deal with in general. How do you think you have evolved as somebody from being hands-on, technical only, to now managing teams, leading teams? How have you personally evolved as a leader through your career?
I think I've been through some hard times doing that, and I've learned from those. I've been really lucky to have some really great leaders behind me as well, to kind of push me in the right direction. I actually became a manager by accident. I was a Scrum master looking after 2 Scrum teams. So there were 7 Scrum teams in this. This actually is a contract where we were all contractors and there were 120 of us, and it was very stressful. So I was actually Scrum master for 2 of the teams. There were 7 in total. There were 2 other engineering managers, I believe, kind of looking after everybody as an engineering manager perspective. And I'm going to be honest, I went on holiday. I got called by my manager while I was on holiday going, hey, how do you feel about being engineering manager? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I've never thought about it. And he was like, well, that might be a conversation when you get back. And I was like, okay. And I actually got back off holiday and there was no conversation about it, like for a week and a half. And so I was like, okay, maybe they figured it out because somebody had left. So there was a gap basically. And so I was like, maybe they decided to recruit externally. So whatever. I wasn't hung up on it. But actually 2 weeks after then, my manager's manager had a chat with me and said, would you mind filling in just in the interim while we find someone? And I was like, yeah, cool, I'll do that. And then I just stayed for 18 months. I was like the engineering manager. So, and I did love it. I loved the fact that actually I was able to then promote one of the senior engineers to Scrum Master. Like, she was very hesitant to do it, but I was like, you can do this. Like, I will support you and be behind you. And I loved the fact that I could coach and mentor her into being something she didn't think she could do.
And you probably know that she does, because you're kind of from a bird's eye view and you see she's got the qualities, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah. And actually, do you know what? She was the best Scrum Master, to the point where she ended up going on maternity. We were just really sad that we had to replace her for someone else. She was awesome. But I love the fact that I could, delve into the business side of things actually a bit more and be a bit more of a decision maker and advocate for the engineering teams a bit more than I could as a Scrum Master. And, but also go back to the engineering teams and have a bit more influence about how they were working and have those discussions with them. And so actually I thought, you know what, this is a space I like. I might stay here. But I had some difficult times in that first kind of year of being an engineering manager. As I said, it was a very pressureful contract that we were on. And it was like 10 o'clock at night. The teams are trying to debug this thing that's meant to go into, our beta system.
You go back.
And they're just going around in circles. And I lost my cool. Like, it wasn't a great moment, but I was at the point where a developer was just standing there, like staring at the screen. And I was like, are you actually going to debug, or are you just going to stare at the screen? Like, this is how I was talking to them. And then, there was another couple of guys who were working on a store procedure where they would fix something in the store procedure and then something else would break. And I was just like, I was going out of my mind. I was like, what are you doing? Like, are you testing this? And I think at about 11 o'clock at night, I just called it. I was like, do you know what? Everybody just go home, because I can't do this anymore. And I think everybody should just go home. So the next morning I came in, debriefed my manager what was going on. And what he did was he got my peer, the other engineering manager, to take over this part that I was looking after, but didn't tell me that he was going to do that, right? Just kind of said, hey, Vaishali, like, Dave's going to look after this bit and you're going to look after the bit he was looking after. I was like, okay. And I kind of sat there for the day, right? I was like, why has he done that? Like, what did I do wrong? What was it, And I kind of sat there for the day thinking about it. By the end of the day, I was actually like, and I was watching what Dave was doing. And I was like, that's really cool. Like, he's
what
really
was he doing?
calm.
Okay.
So he broke down all the issues on a whiteboard, wrote them all down. It was really visible to everybody. He wasn't standing over them. He was understanding what the issues were and then maybe going back and talking to them every so often, right? I watched what he was doing. And then the next day, the issues were resolved and everything was done. But the next day, when we had a bit of a leadership catch-up, at the end of the catch-up, I said to my manager, I was like, could you please explain to me and talk to me and give me a bit of feedback about, like, I'm not hung up about the fact that you gave it to Dave, but could you please explain to me what I did and what you saw and what made you give it to Dave? And his response to me was...
and that's also very, very... I guess courageous from your end as well, because a lot of people, they will not take that in a positive way.
Yeah.
They'll think, oh, what was me? I lost my chance and I'm never going to be in this role. So it takes a lot of humility as well from your end to actually do that, to admit that.
Yeah, his response to me was exactly that. He said to me, he was like, I was waiting to see if you were going to ask me that.
Wow.
And he was like, and I am so glad that you did. Like, and so as soon as he said that to me, and I was like, oh, okay. Like, I didn't realize that was a good quality, right? This is just something I do. But actually, when he said it to me, and then we talked about it, and then when I went home, I was like, okay, like, this whole asking questions thing that I used to do as a developer, I need to carry on doing that, even though I'm in management. Like, I don't know everything. And it was a real eye-opener for me and something that I have carried on through. I love getting feedback, constant feedback about, am I doing okay? Is there something I'm missing? Tell me, like, don't sit on it, please. And I've had lots of different hard bits, to a point where I've been made to cry, like, not in public. I don't do public crying, just the same way. But I have, had moments where I have cried all the way home because of, an end of year review that I've had.
Yeah.
I've never had a bad review in my life, just once. And that once broke me, like, really broke me. But I came back stronger. I came back going, you know what, that bad feedback you gave me, I can do that. And I'm going to show you that I can do that. And I learned, like, I grew massively from that one experience. Like, I grew so much.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's, one thing I say to people is no matter what level you get at, getting that feedback from people, good feedback is always good, but even bad feedback,
Really?
no matter how it's delivered, there's some truth in the way it's delivered to you.
Don't take it personally.
Don't take it personally. You are gonna, like, in the first second you read it, it's gonna be personal. It's gonna hurt. But you've got to learn to sit with it and figure out what you're going to take from it and what action you want to take from it. Like, leaving is the easy option. Like, just going, fuck it, I'm going to go to a different place is the easy option. Sitting with it, learning from it, taking some action to improve yourself is a hard road. And that's where you will become a good leader, by doing that.
There's one quote that kind of stuck with me, that it's something along the lines of that at the end of your life, the highlights of the resume of your life is all the hard things that you got over. It's all the suffering that you went through in your life. So to me, it sounds like you almost had such a hectic time and so much experience and so many challenges that, you brought that mentality, getting over those challenges, being open-minded, being kind of brave. And it seems like that helped you in your management leadership style at the moment.
It did as well. I think the only other thing that helped me was having, and I'm very lucky again, only having a couple of bad managers and knowing that's not what I want to be. That's not how I want to manage.
I'm mindful of your time as well. So I have a couple questions for you. Maybe we can, do kind of quick round questions.
Uh-huh.
What do you think is preventing from having more women in the workforce? Like, for example, in Germany here, a lot of the clients that we hire for, they have, I shouldn't say the word checklist, but they have some requirements from their management to make the teams more diverse or to have more women, because, it's 98% males in some instances. So what do you think is preventing women from getting and staying in tech? Or what can we do to encourage women to get into tech?
Yeah, I think one of the things us women do is look at that checklist and go, we must be able to do 100% of these things. If I can't, I'm not applying. I think it's a big difference between how women and men's brains work. We need to be perfect. And if we're not perfect, we're not good enough. And that stops people applying in the first place. I think once they're in the industry, it is very male orientated. And you do have to have some sort of resilience within you to kind of, get through some of that. And I think there can be from my experience, what I've had is there are a lot of strong personalities that can be in a room. And imposter syndrome can really creep in when these people are talking in big words, big jargons, complicated algorithms, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, I don't know any of that.
I don't belong here.
Yeah, I'm not good enough. I can't do this." And so actually you start thinking, I'm just going to stay as a junior or a mid. And what you're not seeing is actually they're just overcomplicating solutions. Your simple way of thinking is sometimes better than these complicated algorithms. They're just trying to show how clever they are, not trying to solve the problem in the best way possible.
And when you catch yourself having that internal talk, I'm not good enough, I shouldn't be here, what am I doing? What is the phrase or the quote that you tell yourself or you remind yourself to get over it? Do you have a certain saying or some mental framework?
I don't actually. I think I just say to myself, do I need to know it? Do I need to know what they're doing? Like, do I need to be as good as them? Or actually, am I already okay? Am I doing all right? And so actually, the thing I do think when I get to that point is, who can I go and ask if I'm doing okay? Who can I go and validate this with? Whether it's my manager or a peer, I might just go and say, hey, can we have a quick catch up and say, am I doing okay? Is there anything you think I could improve on and do better? And then that validates actually my thinking, or lets me know if I need to do something different.
And you have a big stack of experiences that prove that you are who you say you are.
Of course.
So
yes, I do helps. Have that
too. And a couple of questions related to technology as well, since you're in the financial industry as well. So that's probably me being a little bit selfish and curious about some of the things. But where do you see the banking industry, the finance industry going in general? Because there's a lot of things going on. There's the digital euro, there's CBDCs. There's a lot of talk of real world assets, coming into the blockchain space. There's smart contract explosion. So a lot of these big companies are getting on chain, and it seems like everything's going to be interconnected. Does that affect you in your kind of strategy for the company you work in? And where do you see kind of this whole thing developing, let's say in the next 3 to 5 years?
Yeah, I think there's huge talks right now, and I don't know if it's just the UK. I don't really watch the news that much. I'm going to be honest with you. It's all very depressing. But I'm hearing rumors of cash is going to disappear, like real physical cash is going to disappear. It's all going to be digital currency, right? Which means, is it really your money now? And my argument is, well, when was the last time you had cash in your wallet? I mean, if I look in my wallet, I've probably got a few pounds. I don't have notes and, very rarely. So we're actually already there. We're already digital currency, to be honest. It's not going to take a huge leap for us to get to this point. I mean, the elderly population, maybe, like where they're still going out and getting cash. But I think we really do need to think about where all this is going. And this is, I think, the big kind of risk in the financial industry right now is fraud. And cybersecurity, and everyone's just going to get really tightened down. You've got a group of people who don't want the government knowing where they're going, where they're spending, what they're doing. So many people who don't want Alexa and Google Home, right? Because they don't want Alexa to hear what they're saying at home. And so security and personal data and PII and all of this is going to be a huge factor in the finance industry. I think it's the biggest risk. Yeah. And the other thing, I think, I work in service excellence, so the customer ops space, and it's knowing your customer. When our expectations of the people and the companies we trust are going to be a handful now, and so if your bank knows you as a person, you're going to trust them. Right. I want my mortgage company to know how much I'm spending on my bills and stuff, because I want them to understand the financial struggle I might be going through. I want my bank to recommend to me without me asking. When they can see things are happening in my bank account, I want them to be aware that I may have lost my job, or hey, all of a sudden I've got pet food coming out of my my account, so maybe I bought some pets and I need pet insurance. Right. And I think the banking industry being proactive with our customers and knowing their needs is going to be also a big thing that we need to kind of move towards. I've not really seen that move, to be honest, from any of the banking things I've had. We're getting there slowly, but yeah, we have a big expectations of the companies we trust, and those companies we trust with our money, especially. So
we work with a couple Web3 companies, and I personally saw a big uptick in smart contract developers. So what I've noticed, one of our clients, what they're working on is basically where you can prove that your credit score is such and your age is such and your income is such and such from the company, but it's not visible to the bank person on the other side of things. They cannot see your personal information. So basically you can verify on chain or whatever that you are who you say you are, and you can upload your ID so it verifies without disclosing the information. I think that's a really cool idea.
Yeah, absolutely. But hey, there is still a company somewhere that's getting that, right? And I think this is where we miss that there is someone actually who has a mass of these somewhere. So the bank may not be able to see it, but there is someone else who can.
Still a trusted party,
yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think that's a good way to wrap up there. I know you got another meeting coming up. So Vaishali, thank you so much. Would love to do this again in the future, and I really appreciate your time. I wish you all the best of luck with all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Alex, for inviting me over. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you so much.
Unwrapped Tech Leadership Journeys Baldur Connect podcast.